Right, this has been drying overnight, as you can see. So that's the basic design. It's a woven braid. I used what I would call a fill stamp. It's a stamp used just to fill in all the space, and it has a sort of consistent design that feeds into itself. I did an inverted braid, which you'll see more of when I actually lay down the antiquing gel and all that and paint it. But right now, I need to put Resolene on it. If I don't put Resolene on it, then there is a chance it'll bleed through on the back. And I want it to have a nice green on the back like that, because I really like that. So here's what happens. I'm going to show it here. I actually dyed this portion, these braids right here, I dyed without any Resolene. And I did that so I could show you what happens when you don't have Resolene on it and you try to dye something this thin. This is only about 1.5 millimeters. That's why it doesn't stamp really strongly. It's a light stamp for, you know, the material that we have here. This is what happens. You get bleed through. It literally bleeds through onto the other side. So if I don't put Resolene on this, there's a chance I will get bleed through like that, with the black in particular. And you do not want the black to bleed through to the other side, because then I'd have all these black splotches all over the back side of it. Even though it's on the inside, it still looks a little tacky. Now I have found that where Resolene's concerned, or ecoflow, whatever you're using that's going to be an acrylic finisher, it's not, that dye, regular dye, will stick to it. The antique gel won't. But it is a good idea to put at least 2 coats of Resolene on to make sure that the antique gel doesn't stick to it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my first coat of Resolene. You got to be careful. I've got a little bit of residual here, and it's already getting on my hands. So I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to flip this, I'm just using a trash bag. It's the easiest, quickest, cheapest solution for doing this. I'm just going to fold it over so I don't get that dye transplanted onto my hands or to the project. And then I'll just lay this down. I'm going to do the back first. I want the inside sealed up so that when you use it for your lead cleaning supplies or whatever you're going to use it for, if it leaks in, it'll have some sealed, the leather will be sealed inside. And I've got my Resolene right here in a little die cup. I'll set it there and go to work. Now as far as what I'm going to use to do this, since I have such a wide area to cover, I'm going to use a foam brush. That's just easiest solution when you cover this much area, just to use a foam brush. And I'm just going to literally just brush it on like so. And you'll see, if you didn't let your dye dry long enough, it will actually turn the Resolene a different color. You got to be careful. You can see it's trailing off right there on the bag. I'll show you in a second. So don't put too much Resolene in the die cup when you're doing this, otherwise you're going to end up turning it green and you won't be able to use it for anything else but green. You can see the green is actually pulled over because the dye gets a little bit wet. But since this is the base coat, I'm not worried about that. You got to make sure you get it nice and strong in there. Now it's going to turn the color a little bit. A little darker, there's no way around that, literally. Nothing you can do about that. So yeah, don't dip into the bottle where you have your Resolene stored, or you're going to literally turn the whole bottle a color and then you can't use it for any other color. Make sure you get nice coverage. So that's it. That's coating it with Resolene, and then I just have to let it dry. I'll put my cap on, if I can find it. I always lose the caps, it seems, anytime I do this. Here we go, way over there. And you'll see that that dye turned my Resolene slightly green. So I can use that again for the next coat, but whatever's left is toast at that point. That's the advantage of using just little sample cups for doing this kind of thing, is when you turn it a different color, you don't, contaminate your bottle. Whether it's dye or Resolene or whatever you're using, you do not want to contaminate it with dye, because then you can only use it for that color. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just let it dry, like so. And then I'll come back. I'll give it about, you don't have to give it a long time, but I'm going to give it at least 6 or 7 hours to dry before I lay the next coat down. And I'm doing 2 coats to make sure that when I do the antiquing, that it doesn't have some gap or hole that it'll bleed through. I really don't want that to happen. Okay, here goes the second coat for this. It'll smooth on a lot easier because it's a little bit slick from the first coat. This is just to be sure that I have it nice and sealed for when I do the pattern. I'm just going to do a real quick coat on there, and then just the top. I'm not even going to bother to do the bottom, because the bottom one's got one. You really don't need more than one on the inside. And you'll see it, there's no getting around it. Once you put that Resolene on, that original green color is going to darken. That's just a reality. Resolene changes the color of all dyed leather, period. No getting around that. So it'll darken it, and there's nothing I can do about that. So there we go. It's got the second coat now. I just let it dry for about 6 or 7 hours. I come back to it, and I can start doing the next process of, got a little spot there where it seems to be, for some reason, it's not like the rest of it. Okay, let's try that again. So I'll come back to it, 6 or 7 hours.